All right, so this is going to be a good one today. We're going to actually have an executive interview for you guys, breaking down a marketplace that you guys, of course, have had a lot of questions on in the comments and, of course, over on our Substack. So we'll definitely dive into Quidd in a deep way. This is going to be fun. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back to Metaverse Insider. Let's jump into it today. We actually have both Kyle Willson, who is my co-host here on Metaverse Insider, and also the CEO, Michael Bramlage of Quidd. So great to have you on the show.
It's always great to join and excited to get into the topics today.
Yeah, it's going to be good. How about you? How are you doing, Michael?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Where do we find you? I mean, is Quidd a dispersed team like most of the teams that we talk to here on this show?
We are. We're in fact not headquartered in my kids' playroom, surrounded by toys. That's just where my office happens to be. No, we're.
I recognize some Polly Pocket stuff back there. I have a 6-year-old girl, so I know exactly what.
Same. But what I would say is these are not plants, right? These are actual, like, real, in the sense that, like, this isn't a suggestion that we're going to have Polly Pocket on Quidd anytime soon.
I love it.
But yeah, no, we're entirely distributed, and very much happy to be so. Actually, it's great to have a team like in different time zones, and sure. They can work from home. So yeah,
I like it. Well, we're going to get into a lot of things today. We'll get into a little bit, obviously, a lot about Quidd, strategies, how the market is rolling, things you guys are doing. Before we get started here, though, I do want to set up the giveaway, because there is a giveaway in today's show. And all you have to do is click notify me. So just for you guys that are watching right now, scan that QR, click notify me, and you'll get a chance to go through the whole process of the giveaway here. It's going to be a good one. We'll mention this again further in the show, so if you don't get it here on this time, if you're running around trying to grab your phone, don't worry. You can pause this and come back to this video later. All right, so Michael, let's get into the first topic, and that is the connection with Animoca Brands. Explain to me a little bit about what Quidd and Animoca. We've had Yatsu on our show before. I'm a big proponent of where Animoca is going when it comes to Web3. Explain the partnership.
Great question. And Yat is like the best, right? I'm glad you had a chance to talk to him. So Quidd is, we're long in the tooth. We've been around now almost 6 or 7 years. I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, we were acquired by Animoca. So we're actually a wholly owned subsidiary of Animoca, and we're sort of one star within a constellation under Animoca that includes about 390 or 400 sort of companies in this unique Animoca ecosystem. So within those 400 companies, we kind of play a unique role in the sense that we are a marketplace that predated NFTs. We're a marketplace that's been able to partner with a number of big name brands, whether it's Disney or Game of Thrones or Manchester City. And also those sort of functions sort of have allowed us to sort of get a real head start on the space, right? But no, so the relationship with Animoca is we're a company within the Animoca portfolio that sort of does a very, very unique thing. And I think what we'll talk about later today on the video is this exciting collaboration where you have sort of two, I think, important companies, in that network doing something, I think, really for the first time that's very special.
Okay, so I think Animoca's strategy is pretty significant when it comes to Web3, just what they've been able to do in terms of building the right portfolio, but also the strategic moves that they're making, which we had a chance, as I said, talking with Yatsu. He revealed some of that, so I think I understand where you're going. I want to get into a couple of things here. What percentage right now of your collectibles are currently mintable?
Oh God, I don't have the exact number. It is small though. It's probably 5% or less of the total items in circulation, but that's simply a function of having a really large denominator, right? And the large denominator is simply a function of having been around for 6 or 7 years and partnered with 300 brands, right? So the way to look at it is actually like percent to total of all the items in circulation, but that is a bit skewed because of having done releases with Game of Thrones and Rick and Morty and sort of Manchester City over not just weeks or months or quarters, but years, right? So there's just a vast amount of vintage inventory in circulation. What I would say, though, that's the more positive trend is it might even be 50% now. So the new cohort of collections that are landing on Quidd that launched in 2023 or will launch in the future, nearly half of them are launching as mintables. And so it's actually really cool because there's kind of a cool game happening, I guess you could say, where at any moment we can flip a switch and an old vintage collection can become mintable. I can't tell you the next one where that will happen, but there is one we suspect that will be pretty big and pretty exciting for this audience. But that's kind of how it goes, is of the new collections that are released, each week or each month, about 50% are mintable and currently mintable to Ethereum. And slowly over time, that's starting to take the total pie, right, and expand the sliver that is now 5% to 6%, 7%. We don't have a certain target or a track to how we'll get there, but I would imagine by 2027, the total inventory in circulation, including the vintage stuff from 2016, 2017, I imagine that'll be about 30% to 50% mintable. So we're making really, really good progress in terms of expanding that pie, right, where just a disproportionate amount of new drops we're doing are also dropping as mintables.
All right, so just to make sure I understand, is it everything going forward from here, or only still a selected group of going forwards?
It'll be a mix. It'll be a mix. And there will be collections that we do in the future. I can't announce them now, but they'll be big name brands. Some of those may not be mintables to start. There'll be other big name brands where you could see something happening where new collections launch as mintables, and even the old stuff flips and becomes mintable. So it's a really cool function of these collectibles being digital, in that at any moment vintage inventory that was initially issued 3, 4, 5 years ago could be sort of imbued with that mintables capability. And it's really, really cool, the ability to do that, because the ability to mint is almost like a fundamental right of a collector, right? You should be able to port valuable items in your collection into a storage location like Ethereum that you're more comfortable with, or that you trust more, right? So it's what I would advise your community is, like, sort of always keep an eye on what's happening, because it's always a mix of, a new collection comes out that could be instantly mintable, balanced with all these little surprises that might happen and will happen this year, where old stuff all of a sudden can now live on Ethereum.
Well, and you're dealing with, IP to a certain extent, which I always, when we get into these discussions with a lot of, industry insiders, there's a strategic process that rolls out on this. We see this with Vivi. We'll see this with many other marketplaces, especially when you're rolling out IP, connected type content like what you guys are doing to a certain extent. I know Kyle's has a ton of questions, so I want to don't want to hog all the questions here. So Kyle, I know you had a few to get going here.
Yeah, Michael, it's great to have you on, and obviously off the back of what Paul was saying, the brands you've worked with, obviously over the years, your platform still growing in terms of the mintable size. What's the interest around mintables? Have you noticed, interest from brands like Transformers, Disney, and also could you kind of go into a little bit of detail how the actual IR collection and Mint to Play actually works? But yeah, if you could kind of go into detail a little bit about some of those brands you're working with and kind of their interest in mintables, and kind of what you're saying before about the possibilities of kind of backtracking and those backward compatibles, digital collectibles turning into mintables. Could you go into detail a little bit about that?
Should I unveil every confidential conversation we're having with future licensors? No, I obviously can't go into that.
Here. This is your place to do it. You can start dropping alpha right here.
Exclusive, right. Like let's just drop the embargo and launch the exclusive confidential information. What I would say is, in just broad brushstrokes, it's always a range. It's always case by case, right? And you're working with companies, and you're working with people at these companies, and companies have different strategies. Companies also have different audiences, right? It sort of makes sense that if a company has people that are stewards of a brand, and the brand is meant to be, very family friendly, there might be some hesitation about moving into a space that is really on the technical cutting edge, right? There might be some risks associated with that. However, if you're working with, another company that is in maybe a different genre, there might be a much stronger appetite for moving aggressively into this space. So it truly is case by case. Sports, I think, have a stronger appetite for crypto and for NFTs than maybe more family oriented brands. And so you have this sort of distribution of licensors and brands that you can work with. And the important part, we think at this point, really is to be flexible, right? And that's really what Quidd's strong suit is, because we love NFTs, we love mintables, we love putting the collector in charge of deciding if something's an NFT. But if a brand's just not ready, they can still work with Quidd, right? There's no reason that you can't collect, you can't be emotionally rewarded or even economically rewarded for collecting an object that is not yet a mintable and can exist in Ethereum. That can still be held on Quidd, that can still, be bought and sold in Quidd's aftermarket, that can still be used to complete sets and rank in a leaderboard. So the key point for us is really that we have to acknowledge that every company, every genre of brands is just going to be at a different part in their journey. And we have to embrace that and really be able to offer them a menu of options. I think it's really unique about Quidd, right? If you're really NFT savvy and you want to go into it aggressively, like, we're there for you, right? And we can give you exposure to an audience of real collectors and real fans, people in the Midwest, people in Iowa, people in Texas, right? That don't have a crypto wallet, right? But are crypto curious, right? Or don't hold cryptocurrency and couldn't figure out how to get ETH to pay for the gas fee to mint. We can give you exposure to them, even if your play is heavy NFTs. Or if you're not yet ready for NFTs, we can still give you access to that audience in a way that, is easy to use, very, very inclusive from a technology standpoint. And I think most importantly, very inclusive in terms of price point, right? That's the thing that we don't talk about enough, is like, NFTs are just too expensive for a mass market. It's way too expensive for a mass market. I don't know what anyone's thinking, that you're going to get an audience that is like a Candy Crush audience that has to pay $60 or $100
I'm totally in agreement
for like
with that.
a thing. It's just totally insane. So the really sort of compelling part about, I think, our proposition of working with media companies and folks in sports or other genres is we can contort ourselves in a way that fits what their objectives are, right? And we can do the off-chain stuff, we can do the on-chain stuff, we can do the off-chain stuff that stays off-chain for years. And then when you're ready, allow a licensor to give the approval to collectors to move it on-chain, and only if they want. So that flexibility is totally like a strength of ours, and I think a unique part of our platform and our marketplace. And it's not unheard of in the world of physical collectibles, right? There isn't a sports league that is dictating where a baseball card can be stored, whether it's in an album, at home, or it's in a safety deposit box in a bank because it's super valuable, right? So generally speaking, that's where we are right now. We sense that pretty much everybody over time is going to get comfortable with digital collectibles and is going to largely look at whether it's Ethereum or Amazon as a decision of VHS or beta, right? Something that like the fan base and collectors kind of don't care about, right? Like they're just like, hey man, I want to watch a movie at home. I don't really care what the technical format is, right? As long as like you're enjoying yourself watching the movie, it's like all good. So I think that's kind of where we are, is just, it's totally case by case. And where we've had a lot of success is we can sit down and be very consultative with a brand partner and be like, what are you comfortable with? And we can conform to that and deliver you an audience that meets that need.
Yeah. So I like what you're saying there, and kind of how you're holding brands, so to speak, hands throughout the process. And when you kind of word it like that, that's kind of what it sounds like to me. And speaking of which, the IR collection meant to play again, is this a kind of a move you guys are showing the direction, showing the way, so to speak, in terms of this IR collection and meant to play with the Sandbox? And could you go into a little bit more detail about that specifically and how, we can use these avatars, and will there be more games around the corner with these avatars that you guys are doing in the Sandbox and beyond?
Yeah, I'm gonna totally screw this up in advance, because like I'm just not gonna hit all my points, because it is that cool, right? Like there's a lot of superlatives with this, right? And there's a lot of things to tout as like a first, or as like, the easiest, right? But to back out, Cal, when you mention IR, the context for the audience is we're doing a drop. I believe it would be the week of March 20th. So the drop might happen the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, sort of middle of that week, where anybody on Quidd that has an account for not $60, for not $30, for well less than that, almost an order of magnitude less than that, will be able to purchase a multi-animation 3D avatar that they can hold in their collection on Quidd and have fun with it, check out the different animations, use an avatar to complete a set of avatars, right? Generally collect it on Quidd in a way that sort of Quidd is known for, right? Like, I want these cool objects, I love them, I want to have the full set of them, I want to get the best version of them. So they can do their whole Quidd thing on the Quidd side. But this is where the superlatives come in, and where I'm going to totally bork the talking points I meant to hit. But there's more than that, right? These items aren't just collectible, they're actually playable, and they're the first items we've sold on Quidd with this added utility. Like, if you think of Quidd already has items that have baked in utility, and it is mintable. The ability to sort of travel with something and port it from an off-chain environment to an on-chain environment and then sell it on OpenSea, that's a utility right there that you can travel with it. This is another layer of utility that we're introducing for the very first time, roughly on March 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, where not only can you bring it to the blockchain, but when you bring it to the blockchain, if you connect your wallet with the Sandbox, that item you've brought to the blockchain, you can use in the Sandbox metaverse. So we're selling an item that's collectible on the Quidd side, but once minted, becomes playable in the metaverse that is the Sandbox. And, we're not historians of the space. We sort of keep our heads down and build, but we don't think this has been done before. This sort of off-chain to on-chain linking, or this collectible becoming a playable, and then even back again. That's the cool thing. This isn't irreversible, right? This is like a spoke that's been set up between these two hubs in Animoca, right? Between Quidd and the Sandbox, where you can move an item and I do use it and bring it back.
Like what you're doing. Yeah, and I haven't really seen this in the industry as well just yet. Kind of speaking of the Sandbox, do you guys see yourself working with Sandbox to, have these avatars earning in your game or set experience, part of these contests that we're seeing across Sandbox, where users and gamers can earn sand, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the beginning. We want to get that pipe working really, really well. And then one might imagine that there could be a fairly decent flow of goods from one end of the pipe to the other, right? I can't share too much about what's in the works. I don't want to tip any hands of anybody that might be working on this. But I think you could imagine that when this goes well, there could be follow-on collections that exist. And you should think about it, I think, really, really broadly too, which is when you're connecting sort of point A to point B, point A is unique in Quidd because it is a Web2 audience. It is a collector audience. I mean, real, actual collectors. People go to conventions and collect Funko Pop or collect trading cards, right? It's not necessarily a diehard NFT audience. And if you think about it, what's really cool is it's building community for the Sandbox that, is a potential of 1 billion people, right? And are like what I call like real humans, right? Not people already indoctrinated into the blockchain, right? And that's all new audience that can be brought into into the Sandbox. So it's just a really special collection. It's the first time we're doing it. Firsts are always just awesome and exciting. They're also a little bit nail biting, right? It's going to be a white knuckle ride. What happens next week? But we're thrilled that as part of the Animoca Brands family, we can take sort of these two stars in that constellation and sort of bridge them between each other. And then you might imagine too, hey, maybe I love this screen. I absolutely love that screen. Maybe Quidd in some way is like a Target or a Walmart, right? Like a low price, easy access, extremely high volume, reaching billions of people to get their first metaverse object. The other piece of this too that I think has been unique in the Quidd story for a really, really, really long time is building metaverses is hard. If you look at how long it took Sandbox to get to where they are, it's over a decade, right? Our approach has been, let's build a really great collectibles marketplace. Let's layer on more and more and more benefits to those collectors, but let's not go build that game. Let's not go build that metaverse. Let's acknowledge like that's hard and expensive and will take years off your life. But let's instead build the bridges to those third parties, which is interoperability, right, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So that we can
So
let
Michael,
our collectors bring their items somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of which, Chris had the the screen just showing spatial, and I'd like to ask you, where are these visual 3D files being stored, and how are these able to be viewed in several metaverses where other companies and 3D collectibles and collections kind of struggle in that area? I'd love to kind of get your take on that before we cut to the QR code again there.
There are some things I know and don't know, believe it or not. Specifically how that integration works with how they get the model, I don't know. But what I would say, because we want to be very transparent. That's the other thing about how we approach our relationship with our collector community. I mean, we build a lot quickly. We don't always get it right the first time, but we want to be very transparent. We never want to mislead. When you mint a mintable from Quidd onto the blockchain, you still have a token that's pointing to a centralized server that stores the asset itself, right? It stores like the media asset itself, right? Which is good. It's like a bronze smart contract or a silver smart contract, but it's not gold or platinum, right? It is still kind of what major NFT projects do, where you still have some connection back to centralization, largely to access the media file type, and in some cases, the metadata. So what we would say is when you do mint something, even if it's not meant to play, but when you mint something, make it an NFT, put it in your MetaMask wallet, have it on chain, and if you want to sell it on OpenSea or Rarible, technically what happens when it's on chain is that you're still referencing an off-chain image. The reason I say that is we have every intent in the world to provide multiple smart contracts per collectible on Quidd, so the collector can choose which smart contract they want to mint into and where the image is stored. Now, I probably 90% of your audience just fell asleep because that was a terribly boring technical explanation for how it works. But the reason it matters is we want to have a class of mintables that can truly give the collector a sense that, not even a sense, but almost a guarantee that this thing can last forever, right? Quidd could disappear.
Yeah, absolutely.
But every layer of that collectible, every single layer of that collectible, the provenance, the metadata, the ownership record, and the media itself can live independent of Quidd. So we have every intent to basically have like a platinum smart contract for minting that will be advanced and give that collector this sense of like, yeah, man, this is like entirely on the chain, right? And so some people in the space like obfuscate that or don't talk about that, but it's like, no, we'll talk about it, and we'll tell you right now, like our current contract for minting is kind of silver, but there's a gold and a platinum in the works.
So just to follow up, if that interests you, make sure you scan the QR code. Quidd is giving away a free chance at a free pack and a $100 coupon giveaway. And you can also click to get notified on their collection on Quidd. And the link is in the description, I believe, as well. So you can definitely check that out. And Paul, I'll kind of pass it over to you if you have more questions there for Michael.
Yeah, Michael, interesting, because I want to follow up a little bit about what Kyle was saying there. And I think where he was alluding to was, this recent move of what's happening with Meta and them basically kind of walking away from the NFT marketplace. Arweave was very connected into that in the essence of being able to be on chain for the Instagram NFTs. Where he's going with it, I think, is when you look at, you said something that was interesting to me, is the potential to select where it could be stored. Now, is this going to go all the way down to the platform level? Like, could I say, hey, I want all my NFTs on Arweave?
We know the Arweave guys pretty well, actually. They're one of the first people we called years ago when we started to develop the strategy and the technical solution. What I'll say is a bit more philosophical, Paul, so I don't know if I can give you a direct answer on Arweave, but what I can say is we think Quidd can do very well if it's the most collector-friendly place on the planet. And a way to be the most collector-friendly is to give collectors education, to not mislead them, and to give them as much optionality as possible. So we've always said that we believe in a multi-chain world, right? And so we're really just dealing with Quidd in a static point in time right now where we only support Ethereum. We want to support all the chains that our community wants to see their items live on, right? So basically the philosophy is to give as much choice and as much agency to the collector, in some ways to recreate the physical real world that we live in, where there aren't these restrictions of taking something physical and bringing it where you want, when you want, how you want. So the challenge is there's a lot of spokes that you have to plug in. There's a lot to piece together, but that hard technical work we think is super valuable because I think Quidd will do well when the community is happy. And I think the community will be happy when they don't feel so restricted as to where they can take their objects.
Yeah, well, that gets into one of my questions around interoperability. I mean, if you look at Illuvium, VV, et cetera, interoperability is a bit of a struggle there. Do you think that, from a strategic standpoint, do you think that lies more in the fact of the IMX system, or do you think it's more tuned into like some of the brand deals that kind of lock that in the early days? Because there's a lot of projects out there that could be going in this direction, but they just have not.
Very true, and a very accurate observation. We have a unique perspective because of the fact that we've been doing this for so darn long. I mean, we predated CryptoKitties, right? So we built partnerships with brands that could never even contemplate NFTs or storage or what's on chain versus not, because the notion of having something on chain didn't exist beyond like Bitcoin, right? So we have a unique perspective in that we've seen the industry evolve. We've seen the case by case sort of dealing with these amazing brand partners and how some are super aggressive and love it, and some are want to test it. So I think generally it's just you're going to see things evolve and move. You're going to see new standards being embraced and they're going to emerge. And I do think it's just it's a matter of time, and the reason I think ultimately it's a matter of time before more brands and more companies embrace this is like, I firmly believe if it's not too expensive, if it's not a scam, it's just really good for the collector and for the customer, right? And like, no matter what, as long as you pursue that as your North Star, like you'll do better economically. And that extends to not just Quidd or to our collectors, but also to the brands, right? That we work with today and in the future. So it's just a matter of time. And think of it this way. Think of like the evolution of streaming, right? How many media companies weren't initially down with streaming and viewed something like YouTube largely as copyright. So you had, it's up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, like when Disney Plus came out, like they actually could have done this 10 years ago, right? When Netflix got into it. So you just have to get comfortable with it. And I think that's really the promising thing for collectors, and even let's say physical collectors that have some apprehension about getting into digital collectibles is like digital collectibles are fun. Digital collectibles don't have to be more expensive than physical collectibles. Digital collectibles can always be in your pocket anywhere you go. Digital collectible doesn't have to worry about spilling water on it, right? Or like losing it in a fire, right? There's just a lot of advantages to collecting digitally and physically. And over time, we're all we're all eventually just going to get there. Is
Yeah.
generally our thesis.
Well, it's interesting too, because our consulting group, we talk to a lot of brands about this evolution into NFTs, more importantly from digital collectible space, because most brands we're talking to right now are already kind of moving in this whole direction toward interoperability. One is they understand it much more than even I thought would be the case in 2023. And I think there's been a big education lift here recently. When you think about, you know, when your acquisition came through Animoca, was interoperability kind of the table stakes of what they, because I've talked to Yatsu offline and he is really big on this very point.
Well, I think interoperability is actually kind of a smaller point to like a bigger point. I think the bigger point, and where Yacht speaks so eloquently, is maybe in comparisons to games.
Yes.
If you think about games, in 2008, you had sort of two things conspiring. You had a new platform like a smartphone, like the iPhone, and then you had in-app purchase, the ability for a developer to directly integrate with someone's credit card, right, without having to leave the app or like re-enter the number. Those two but those two technical things were these foundational contributors to the development of an entirely new business model in video games that hadn't existed, right? Like free to play, right? And free to play is a blessing and a curse. Free to play changed the economics of how expensive it was to play a game. And what did that do? That actually increased by tenfold the number of people around the planet that play video games, right? Because it could be always in your pocket and you could play for free, right? So that's a huge boon to this notion of how many people on the planet can be entertained by and fall in love with games. But the curse with it all is the economic model on which it is built are these closed economies run by centralized services that generally only make money the more new stuff they produce, right? Seasons, packs, the inability to sell to somebody else, like that's not great, right? That's predatory. And the free-to-play model essentially preys on like 2% of whales to subsidize the cost of 98%. And so I think the bigger issue is creating either a gaming experience or a collecting experience that has a new economic model associated with it that's decentralized, not centralized, right? That lets people that own the collectible sell it and make money, and that lets them do more things and take it outside the walled gardens. So I think interoperability is part of this new economic system that I think you'll hear Yacht speak so well about. So it's one piece, right? But there are other pieces tied to it.
Yeah, and I think to your point, we could do a whole nother show on this, the whole issue of these closed economic systems. I still believe that there's, I won't call it conspiracy theory, but I think there was a constructed effort in getting free to play into the marketplace to essentially pave the way for what we're seeing now, which is these massive centralizations of the markets, the adoption of the players. Evil is afoot.
Well, I would just, this is the thing I think that our space needs to get back to. Like, we need to zoom out a little bit. We need to get away from like the shilling and all that stuff, and kind of like, what are we, what's the actual problem we're solving and the benefits that we're providing, and like who's going to bring about this better experience for gamers or better experience for collectors. And I think generally, like, it's going to be us. It's going to be the small companies. It's going to be the people at the leading edge that are going to talk about it, because we're committed to how much better this vision actually is. And think about free to play in 2008, right? You had people being like, why should you have to spend $400 on a console? Why should you have to spend $600 on a disc? There's a whole bottom of the pyramid that can't afford that. Let's give them games, right? So there was a sense of like, this is a noble effort when they end to free to play. I would love our space to reclaim this notion of a noble effort, right? Because it's just a better system for video game players, for people in a metaverse, for collectors, whether physical or digital. And I think that's the thing we should talk about, as opposed to like, did this thing pump and all that stuff, right? Because
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Right. There's a much better level of where the industries are going, and this goes around all things. Whether it's digital assets, collectibles, all the way into what we're seeing into traditional cryptocurrencies as well. A lot of that gets into it. I want to jump into my last two questions because I want to make sure we have enough time here. And these are more strategic scenarios that I think you'd be able to give us some insights on. When you think about rebranding, and I look at the ability for adoption to occur, because you're right, back to your point, easy onboarding, getting into mainstream, really understanding where the collectible communities are. Do you think a rebranding like what Vivi did, Collectors at Heart, they really went after that component? Do you think that's something that you at Quidd would consider, or do you feel really confident about where you guys are right now? From a brand perception.
Yeah, I think we'll probably look a little sexier in the future. So like the visual styling of a brand, I think what you'll also see is a concerted effort to sort of deconsolidate what we have. Mm-hmm. There are a few Easter eggs you can find on our website that make strong suggestions to Quidd not being a single store, but a network of merchants. Okay. And that's all I can say about that, but you might take that idea and run with it a bit, where maybe there's not one Quidd, but there's actually 1,000, right? Each able to serve its unique community in a very, very deep way that's uncompromised, right? But I would say that the notion of emotion and collecting because you love it, right? And all that, like, that's been where we started. Right. Yeah. When you build a collecting experience that's entirely digital and you predate NFTs, you have to build an experience that's for collectors that are there for the love and really nothing else, because there wasn't anything else in 2016,
for sure.
17, 18. So maybe in some ways they've rebranded a bit into our lane, because we've always talked about collecting what you love. You can find old swag of old Quidd logos from 2016 that use that exact phrase. So in a lot of ways, I don't think we're going to change. I think we've consistently said, people should collect because they love the brand. They love the experience of collecting. They're going to meet friends along the way. If there's anything else on top of that, great. But that's what our core was then, and I think still is.
Yeah. Okay, last question for me is, when you think about the identity of Quidd, you guys offer just an array of collectibles, from stickers, fine art, indie, 3D game assets, etc. Do you think that is so broad that identity is something that you need to zone in on? And I look at this because of the fact that if you look at the really good collector communities, they're usually really isolated, not necessarily by IP, but maybe by particular type. And those are the ones that explode. I mean, you could take this all the way down to Reddit communities, et cetera, that really kind of go in that direction. What are your thoughts about being so broad in the space right now around collectibles?
We debate that a lot, but and certainly we've got kind of a sweet spot for sort of trading cards. I think we do that uniquely where others don't. But we're trending towards this being a strength. I mean, the drop that's happening for mint to play figures. I mean, that's not just a sticker app that's doing that, right? So let's be honest. That's a flex of how powerful this technology is. Right. That for our collector community, we can deftly shift from just a sticker to a multi-animation figure that has 30 plus animations that you can play in the leading metaverse. We can do that, like we eat breakfast, right?
Yeah, and that to me is a very powerful aspect. Yeah, very powerful aspect, for sure.
And so we think of big visions, right? And we think of things like 2030 and 2040 in terms of that time horizon. But so far, our foray into new product types, whether it's static 3D or it's animated 3D or it's animated 3D that you can play, we're getting feedback from our collector community that they're like, yeah, if you can make the thing cooler, do it, right? And so no one's upset at Walmart or Target because they have a store shelf with with like stuffies and plush that also is next to a store shelf with trading cards. No one's like, how dare you do that, right? So it's like, why not, right? We think it's actually a strength, and we think ultimately, if you can be a superstore for collectors, you'll be very, very big.
Yeah, for sure. I know Kyle has some questions to wrap up here, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Yeah, and you mentioned collectibles, storefronts. I'm very curious what will happen when eBay and Amazon really start getting into the NFT game. We know that Amazon just around the corner are set to really launch their collectibles, and it's rumored that they'll have like 15 collections. Very curious about kind of these centralized platforms moving into the NFT space. What's your thoughts on that, Michael?
I'm sure I'll give you a soundbite that could come back to haunt me in 6 months. But YOLO. This stuff is very special. This stuff's very specialized. Very specialized. It's not a shopping cart model. That's what I would say. There's no shipping or fulfillment. If those two marketplaces don't build from scratch, I don't know that they're actually able to build an experience that collectors want, because collecting's not shopping. It's just not. And collecting is a very, very true point that we believe in thoroughly. Collecting physical and digital aren't the same. So I would have to remake eBay to make it really work for digital. I wouldn't just slot it in as a picture next to a picture of a trading card, right? They'll get instant volume, but I don't think it has really those subcomponent little feature things that you just need when you're exclusively doing collectibles. So they might run the risk of building on top of very old but very powerful legacy systems with a billion customers or whatever, right? They'll get benefit from that. But is their product experience going to be that great? I don't know, right? It will be great if they, like us, I think, built it for collectors from the bottoms up.
Yeah, and to your point, Quidd's UI, pretty incredible. I love what you guys are doing and how you can select multiple, games, maybe even a few more games other than Sandbox in the future. Speaking of which, what does the roadmap look like? Are you going to have more brands coming on board, more AR features, and what about Weta Workshop as well? More mini epics, if you will, and what's kind of give us a little bit of the alpha here on the channel.
Well, it's great that you say, Debbie, thank you for the compliment about the UX and the UI. What I think might be encouraging for your community is I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's terrible, because there's so much constant room for improvement. And that's the thing I really hope that your community can get from this. And from what I'm saying is Quidd ships a lot of code. We work very, very fast. I don't think we've ever been accused of, not trying new things, not shipping new functionality. We really have a world-class engineering and product team that is shipping things every week to make the experience better. And so the experience, if you think it's great, that's fantastic. I think it's just okay, because I know where it can go and how much better it can actually be for our collector community. In terms of alpha, probably a big announcement on a brand partnership in the next 45 days, and it might catch you by surprise, which I think is kind of cool. The next set of features are going to be like the least sexy features we've ever done. But it'll make your use of Quidd so much better. So think of things like notifications and messages, basically bringing a lot of transparency to what's currently still opaque in the marketplace, so that if you're an active trader, you're going to be able to make more trades, right? So that's from a product standpoint. Maybe a sexy hire or two, right, that shows just our commitment to the space and how we're kind of aggressively moving our chips on the table. So 2023 is going to be a really, really exciting year. And one of the reasons I can say that too is you mentioned kind of like more metaverses to support. When we build things, we don't build them as one-off. We build them as a pipe that can be repurposed again and again and again and again and again. And so a lot of what we've built is foundational. That is, you're going to see a lot of stuff layered on top of it that doesn't take 3 years, doesn't take 3 months, but takes like 3 days, because the way we built it. So just to summarize, give you a little bit of alpha, big announcement on brand partnership in about 45 days. Some important functionality that's going to make using Quidd even easier. And then a hire or two that may or may not tip our hat or expose a little bit about where we're really going.
I got a quick question just before I kind of close out here and pass it back to Paul. Do you guys have plans for maybe an app gallery similar to what we've seen on Spatial, Vivi, and some of the other collectible apps? And when dark mode?
When, I know, right? It keeps me up at night, just like, oh my God, my retina are burning. We're going to do, regarding dark mode, we're going to do a UX kind of overhaul, big cleanup over the summer of iOS and Android. So I would say sort of like summer, early fall for a UX overhaul that we think could include that all important toggle of like, day mode, night mode, right? So I would sort of target like summer, fall to get that done. And then, sorry, Kyle, what was the first part of your question?
Yeah, do you guys plan to do showrooms and that kind of feature where you can showcase your collectibles?
We'd love to, but we don't want to build it. And it's not because we're lazy. It's because we want someone better than us to build it. So that's circling back to Sandbox and to the really important first of its kind collection that's coming out March 21st, March 22nd, March 23rd on Quidd, market.onquidd.com. Click the QR code, check it out. We're a platform that wants to be part of an ecosystem. To build things ourselves is expensive and takes time and has execution risk and might not be the best showroom or display case out there. So would a collector love that? Absolutely. Are we the best to build it? No. But let's work with the best to build it. Let's take one of these pipes and give them a pipe. And then there you go.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we've been here with Michael Bramlage, of course, CEO and co-founder over at Quidd. Michael, thank you so much for stopping in today, answering all our questions. Hopefully the audience will get a chance to hit that QR code for that special offer. We'll also leave some links down below. But thanks again for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Take care, Michael.
Okay, guys. You are not in the diamond circle. I can tell by some of you out there because we see how many people watch our show and how many are subscribed. And typically our subscribers are Diamond Circle members, so make sure and jump in. But the number one thing you can do, of course, is subscribe right here, right now on the YouTube channel. If you're over on our podcast side, make sure and jump in. You'll get a chance to see a lot of our visuals here. It also takes you a little bit more immersed into the experience of what we try to do here on Metaverse Insider, so make sure and jump in on YouTube. But we do like you over there on the podcast as well. And of course, if you want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on Metaverse Insider.